Back. Tonight's show, we're going to be linking up all of the terrorist cells in California, Arizona, all over the United States, and how they're using the First Amendment, as a shield, a screening device, a cloaking device from Star Trek, the old Romulan cloaking device, how to infiltrate America, ISIS coming into every community in Los Angeles and San Bernardino and Paris, all over the world, using the cloaking device of freedom of speech. And so what I'm going to be talking about tonight is that the First Amendment is not absolute. In fact, it's interesting, as I talk with jurists, attorneys and judges, sheriffs and other people of this nature, they keep telling me this false notion that the First Amendment is absolute. Now, this, I think, was first espoused by a member of the Ku Klux Klan, for real. 1947, Hugo Black, member of the Supreme Court, postulated some very bizarre ideas that the First Amendment has preeminence even over self-defense, which is not in accordance with our laws. Non habet legem, necessity knows no law. Self-defense knows no law. If ISIS is in here to kill us and cut off our heads, and we keep bleating like sheeps that the First Amendment is absolute, then they'll win the war. So with no further ado, the First Amendment is absolutely not absolute. In the future, we shall outlaw Islam. The picture of this guy here, he's in federal prison, Warren Jeffs. He's convicted of molesting underage children in his temple. This is part of his religious belief, having sex with girls underage. Also, we killed a member of Al-Qaeda, an American citizen born and raised in Las Cruces, New Mexico, Al-Qaeda leader Anwar al-Awlaki. We killed him for his religious beliefs, which was jihad. Now, I went to his mosque with a number of our friends. I'll show pictures of him soon. And I have to tell you, that is when I discovered that all of the mosques in California and the United States are forward operating bases for Al-Qaeda and ISIS, and they're all terrorist bases. The First Amendment has always been regulated, always. No dangerous religion, speech, press, or assembly has ever been permitted, and there's lots of proof of it at my website, whatdidmo.do.com. I also have a solution. All of the fellows that I know, and gals, who are in this industry of exposing Islam, they always tell the problems, but they never ever come up with a solution. Well, we have a solution. It's operating very well. We found a couple of terror cells in Kingman, Arizona, and in California by using the system. It's legal, ethical, moral. The FBI knows about it. Homeland Security knows about it. They know everything that we're doing is legal, and they don't bother us. We don't bother anybody, and I'll get to that at the end. When Dr. Gary Cass asked me to use my counter-guerrilla United States Marine Corps intel skills learned in Vietnam, I agreed. It was so easy, for real. It was so easy for me to find the terror cells in California. If I tell you how I did it, it's kind of like Sherlock Holmes. You say, oh, that's so simple, even a child could do that. My central thesis is that the First Amendment absolutely is not absolute. That indeed we can and we shall outlaw Islam within 50 years, maybe as early as 10 years. People will wake up and they'll find out. They'll discover, even though Hugo Black, the member of the Ku Klux Klan, said that the First Amendment is absolute, that it guarantees absolute freedoms even to murderous thugs like ISIS, that's not correct. And America is beginning to awaken now with the Paris attacks and the San Bernardino massacre. They have that. We've gone out to the mosques in California and Missouri and Ohio and in Arizona. We've gone face-to-face with guys dressed like, Osama bin Laden, some of the most dangerous people in the world. And we have found them. And I came to the conclusion by doing this from my skills as an intel officer in the Marine Corps that every mosque is a forward operating base and that it is a terrorist cell. So this cannot be stopped. As Islam grows biologically, it cannot be stopped. And as we have shown on the show, as they grow, they get more and more aggressive, more and more dangerous. Then they start raping, murdering, and doing all the things they can. Sadly, too many of our jurists, too many of our intellectuals, too many of our pastors and college presidents think that we can sue ISIS and Al-Qaeda, they will stop. Now, this is a picture down here below of the 2,000 Saudi-funded mosques in the United States linked into the Anwar al-Awlaki Global Network, which is part of the Paris Network, and also the San Bernardino network. This guy was killed in action. We went to his mosque. Who is this guy? Anwar al-Awlaki. We went to his mosque shortly after he had left and gone to Washington, D.C. We walked into a hornet's nest, a buzzsaw, and a group of insane people who wanted to kill us. If it wasn't for the number of deputy sheriffs there, we would have been attacked and probably killed. At that moment there, that was in early 2002, I understood, having gone to a number of mosques in California, that these are all forward operating bases, they're all terrorist cells. They work very similar to the North Vietnamese Army working with the Viet Cong, which is what I specialized in Vietnam. This guy is Anwar al-Awlaki, very dangerous guy. He was killed in 2012. I do have witnesses who were with me when we went to his mosque, Dr. Gary Cass, Bill McKeever, and Phil Magnan. Very dangerous character. This is another mosque, hard to see, right around the corner from that last mosque. Very dangerous Taliban or ISIS Muslim here. Down here we have Michelle Moon of Breitbart News. She actually went to this mosque after we went to this mosque. We went to this mosque. We were surrounded by about 200 Muslims chanting, yelling, screaming, Allah Akbar. Guys from the Taliban and Al-Qaeda, from Pakistan, from Afghanistan. They were telling my pastor that they wanted to punch him in the head, knock him out, cut his head off. We had a professional videographer there, an older gentleman. The videographer, he got so frightened, Chuck Black, he got so frightened that he forgot to put the cassette into the video, didn't get the coverage that we wanted to get, and sadly, that night he had a heart attack and died. He was so upset. This is only 3 or 4 miles outside of the San Diego football stadium and baseball stadium. American citizens, Douglas MacArthur McCain, who was a guy going to this mosque, recently killed in Syria after reportedly fighting alongside ISIS militants, has been at the center of the new concerns over homegrown mosques here in San Diego and San Bernardino and Corona and New York and Texas and Alhambra, all over the United States. This guy here was in San Diego, and I remember 2 of the guys that flew in the World Trade Center were from right around the corner here, and they lived with the imam. This guy attended San Diego College, worked in a Somali restaurant, and did all these crazy things. So with Gary Cass and I and about 10 other people went to this mosque, probably right after we went to the Anwar al-Awlaki Mosque. It was very dangerous, and I remember when we were surrounded, it was kind of like the movie Black Hawk Down. The terrorists, we had the police there at this mosque to keep them from going violent. They would have gone violent had we not had the police. And this is a good demonstration for people. A lot of people think that we can turn the cheek, we can show love, and we can do all this. Look, we've done all that. We have never threatened these people. We have handed them gospel tracts. We have told them Jesus loves you. And always they say, oh, we want to kill you, Allah Akbar. Every time, every time, every time. I've done this hundreds of times all over the United States. As we stood there watching, this huge Muslim gentleman, must have been 6'6" or so, came up behind my friend, said he wanted to knock him down. And he also said, if this was back in Afghanistan, we would cut off your head. In fact, not only would we cut off your head, but the police would help us. In 2007, in Anaheim, we led a demonstration at the Council on American Islamic Relations building right outside Disneyland. The Council on American Islamic Relations CARE is clearly Muslim Brotherhood, and this fellow symbol here, the 4 fingers, means he's Muslim Brotherhood, and the symbol above it means that he supports al-Nusra and ISIS, which are virtually the same groups, funded by Qatar, our allies, where CENTCOM is over there on the Sinai Peninsula. Qatar owns Al Jazeera. Qatar funds al-Nusra, ISIS, and other terrorist groups. When this fellow came out, he tried to intimidate us. The police came in and helped us out. As we broke up to leave, Anaheim, California, 2007, a couple of the Muslims from this office, this guy's office, followed a couple of our Coptic ladies' homes and threatened to suicide bomb them. They called me. I called the FBI, got involved with the FBI and with the investigator for Anaheim. The investigator for Anaheim told me that Anaheim gets billions of dollars in cash and money orders every year and disappears. This comes in through the Muslim community. I said, it doesn't disappear. It goes over to Qatar, where they fund suicide bombers, ISIS, al-Nusra, and other terrorist groups. He said, Yeah, but we couldn't prove it. I said, just because you can't prove it does not mean it does not exist. A lot of people don't understand that. You know, there's a lot of times we can't prove who the murderer or the bank robber was, but that doesn't mean they're innocent. It means they might get away with it, which what they have. This guy over here, this is the president of Turkey, and he's also got the 4 fingers on there. He's got the 4 fingers down here. The same thing that this guy up here has. And this president in Turkey, he supports ISIS, al-Nusra, and the other terrorists. The guy there up here is Hussam Aylouch of the Anaheim office of Council on American and Islamic Relations. His daughter used to go to high school in Corona. We passed out pictures of this guy right after the Benghazi ambassador was murdered because we were part of that. And I wanted to show the Muslim Brotherhood we were not afraid of them. We were not afraid of having our heads cut off and being killed by the Muslim Brotherhood in the United States. This guy over here is Morsi. He's got the 4 fingers. You can barely see it. Now, you can go to my site, whatdidmodo.com, and you can click on, and every one of these will come back, and they'll come down. You can see them, and they'll be in print and also audio, and you'll be able to see the stuff, expand it. You'll see the URLs where you can go and observe it and say it. President Morsi, before he became president of Egypt after the alleged Arab Spring, which is a Muslim Brotherhood revolution, was a professor. He was a professor in California at Cal State Northridge. Bill Clinton, he was on Bill Clinton's show, and Bill Clinton was gushing over him along with his daughter Chelsea. What a wonderful and great guy he is. He's on death row now in Egypt because he is Muslim Brotherhood. Muslim Brotherhood is outlawed in Egypt because they murder and kill people. But under our crazy asylum laws, because they are persecuted in Egypt, because they murder people, they murdered Anwar Sadat, then they come into the United States and they're granted asylum. It is crazy. We've already talked about this character down here, Anwar al-Awlaki. It's interesting. He was in La Mesa, California, right outside of San Diego, born and raised in Las Cruces, New Mexico, San Diego. We went to his mosque. Guy was totally out of control. Now, Anwar al-Awlaki aided and abetted. These 2 guys here were guys who flew into the World Trade Center on 9/11, 2001. They knew and they worked with Anwar al-Awlaki and with the other terrorist cells in California. In 2012, when the media accused me of being, let us say, lunatic, because I said there was terrorist cells in the United States, this is how I knew, just like discovering cancer in the body, just like discovering, bacteria through a microscope, I knew that every one of the mosques in California, in Arizona, in Texas, in New York, and everywhere else are all terrorist cells, forward operating bases, operating with Muslim Brotherhood, all networked together, like I showed in that map before. Now, Anwar al-Awlaki, right after they blew up the World Trade Center, these 2 guys here, he was working with these 2 characters. He was aiding and abetting them, helping them. But the Pentagon, under Donald Rumsfeld, considered him to be a moderate Muslim, and they invited him to the Pentagon to help them out. Later on, they discovered too late that he was a bad guy. He was a bad guy. This character over here is Major Nidal Hassan. He was a major in the United States Army, murdered a bunch of soldiers at Fort Hood, and he was considered to be a moderate Muslim. He was also working with Anwar al-Awlaki. This next photograph here is outside the LA Coliseum. This is the mosque outside the LA Coliseum. And you will see that this tall fellow here, if you go to my website, whatdidmodo.com, is Sheriff Baca, the LA Sheriffs, probably the most powerful sheriff department in the world. And the guy he's with is Maher Hadhoud, a leader of the Muslim Brotherhood. And remember, the logo of the Muslim Brotherhood shows crossed swords, a Quran at the top, and in Arabic at the bottom is Surah 860, which states in the Quran, chapter 8, verse 60, terrorize the infidel, kill them, use steeds of war like tanks and guns and kill them and murder them, which is what happened in Paris, which is what happened at San Bernardino, which is what happened when they flew the planes of the World Trade Center. Sheriff Baca thinks the Muslim Brotherhood is great. That guy with the 4 fingers, Hussam Aylouch, you congratulated him. You can see all the URLs and all those things on my website too. This is really disturbing. This photograph here, you will see President George W. Bush right here, and next to him, the leader of all the United States Muslim Brotherhood, Musa Siddiqui, out of Garden Grove. Musa Siddiqui, his mosque was formed a long time ago by Mahbub Khan, who helped bring the Muslim Brotherhood in the United States, turned his mosque over to Musa Siddiqui, funded by the Saudi Arabians. The Saudi Arabians fund terrorism all over the world. So here you have President George W. Bush. I met with Siddiqui 3 times. The first time he told us how he fooled George W. Bush, that he told George W. Bush this quote from the Bible. Listen to how he twists this verse of the Bible to fool George W. Bush. The verse he used to get into the White House, to give a Quran to George W. Bush, and to prove to George W. Bush that we worship the same God according to the Muslim Brotherhood was John 1:1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was Allah. Notice he twisted from God to Allah, so it's more sympathetic. This guy here, Musa Siddiqui, also is involved in zakat, which is alms or tithes or billions of dollars, and 2.5% of that minimum goes to funding terrorism throughout the world. Musa Siddiqui also led this terrorist, former Adam Gadon, from Winchester, California, not too far from Temecula, not too far from San Bernardino, led him into Islam. He immediately decided, gee, if I'm a Muslim, a good Muslim, according to the Quran, 22 verses in the Quran, will do what Muhammad did. That is, do what ISIS did, attack, kill, behead, rape, murder, child molester, all these other things. This guy was involved with Musa Siddiqui. We have all the facts, evidence, and proof. Siddiqui has admitted it. This guy worked for Musa Siddiqui. This man here passed away last month. Last month, he found out when he died, if he got to 72 virgins, or maybe he got up there and there were 72 Virginians, and they're now beating the hell out of him for the rest of his life. Little humor, why not? So Ahmad Sakar, I met him twice. The guy's a total lunatic. He had a PhD in biology, biochemistry. He was actually extremely bright, very articulate. Very dangerous man. When we went and we had a demonstration exposing the Muslim Brotherhood at Anaheim a number of years ago, Ahmad Sakar incited and riled up the Nation of Islam to come and attack us. We had a number of police there. They had to stop doing what they're doing. Ahmad Sakar from Brea, California, now deceased, Anaheim, Garden Grove, California. He brought the Muslim Brotherhood, the Muslim Student Association, into the United States. I have lots of documentation showing him as a young man with all of his leaders, all of his terrorist buddies who were out there spreading the Muslim Brotherhood, going into UCLA, University of Southern California Trojans, Cal State Fullerton, going into Georgetown, University of Arkansas, Weber State in Utah, University of Oklahoma, University of Texas, all those places. Musa Siddiqui working with Ahmad Sakar through the Muslim Student Association, Muslim Brotherhood, Islamic Society of North America. By the way, a clue for you. If ever you see Islamic Society or Islamic Center, there's a 99% chance that is Muslim Brotherhood. So when we went and this guy was presented to us, Siddiqui told me and several other guys that he had to leave immediately. He was flying directly to meet directly with his boss, the king of Saudi Arabia. When he told me he was going to meet with the king of Saudi Arabia face to face, that the king of Saudi Arabia was going to talk to him, Musa Siddiqui, when he was going to talk to Musa Siddiqui here, I knew immediately that Siddiqui was the player for the whole United States of the Muslim Brotherhood. Ahmad Sakar lectured us on how stupid Americans are and how he had brought in the Muslim Student Association into America in the 1960s. Then I found out he was Muslim Brotherhood. He's linked to Anwar al-Awlaki. He's linked to the San Bernardino murdering thugs. Here's 2 of the imams of San Diego. Again, you can see them at whatdidmodo.com. They'll bring them up. They're both imams of San Diego, where the 2 guys that flew into the World Trade Center went to the mosque there. They're both Muslim Brotherhood. These fellows here are imams in Arizona. This guy over here is a Deobandi, which they created the Taliban. Very interesting guy. We have been observing his mosque through Facebook and things of that nature. Very suspicious characters going to that mosque, posting very suspicious things. Yes, indeed, we have turned them over to the authorities. We'll see how far it goes. Again, remember, the authorities are hamstrung by the First Amendment because that member of the Ku Klux Klan, Hugo Black, believed in the absolutism that any religion could come into the United States, even a religion as crazy as, say, the First Cannibal Church, who kills and devours children during their ceremony. According to Hugo Black, and sadly, most jurists in the United States, I'm wondering about Hugh Hewitt. I don't think he fully understands non habet legum. Necessity knows no law. These guys have been so inbred and so brainwashed by their law professors that they're in the box, they can't get out of the box, they can't think, they can't protect us. So this guy over here, his name is Imam Umar Farouk Mahmoud. He's a Deobandi. The Deobandis formed the Taliban. This guy right here is the Tucson leader of the mosque, which is clearly Al-Qaeda and one of the first terrorist cells in the United States. This guy over here is the Phoenix Mosque, and he had 2 of his members shot to death in Texas. They were ISIS members going to murder people. I went to Congressman Dana Rohrabacher's office, and this picture over here is him. That picture is still in his office. That's with the Taliban. He thinks because we were fighting the Soviets at that time that the Taliban is good. I disagree. I think that was one of the biggest mistakes we made when we armed the Taliban off and road. That's where Osama bin Laden and all these other guys come from. CIA disagree with me. Well, guess what? It's America. We can disagree. I'm right. They're wrong. There you go. Dana Rohrabacher, very, sadly, very slow man. Down here, this is very interesting. This is a professor of law at Chapman University. He took $35,000 from Samuel al-Aaron, convicted terrorist. The $35,000 he knew he was getting from the Muslim Brotherhood. He didn't care. He bragged. He has never remitted it back. It goes on and on and on. Over here, we have George W. Bush with Samuel al-Aaron. His son is a diplomat in the U.S. State Department, Samuel al-Aaron, clearly Muslim Brotherhood and a terrorist. His son is an employee of the United States State Department, Muslim Brotherhood. I believe he's a terrorist. If he wants to sue me, then during discovery, we can open it up and find him. This happened due to Grover Norquist and Karl Rove. Grover Norquist, huge leader in the Conservative Political Action Committee, former board member of the National Rifle Association. Karl Rove aiding and abetting bringing in the Muslims in to help get people elected. It goes on and on and on. This shows Grover Norquist with his Islamic Free Market Institute, which is clearly Muslim Brotherhood. One of the photos from before is Suhail Khan, Muslim Brotherhood, whom Grover Norquist is trying to get into political office. These are showing the UCLA and the University of Southern California rivalry. Both have very active Muslim student associations. San Diego State Muslim Student Association also. Here we have over here Maher Hout and intimidating some members of the Christian community. Over here we have Rick Warren, who said Salam Alaikum, met with the Muslim Brotherhood at a big conference, and this woman here used him to her advantage. This one here, John Brennan with the CIA, he supports, sadly, these guys are the Muslim Brotherhood. The Zakat Foundation funds terrorism throughout the world. This guy over here, Mohammed El-Biari, member of the Muslim Brotherhood, and it was also in Homeland Security. This guy over here, James Clapper, in charge of the intelligence groups. This is the leader of NASA. I used to work for him. He was my boss. He says his job is to help the Muslim, basically the terrorists. Prince Bandar, right down here, aided and abetted George Bush. And here's George Bush. And also Bandar, this guy over here with George Bush gave $73,000 to the guys that flew the planes into the World Trade Center. Code 20. Okay, 1. How did we find the terrorist centers down there all over California? It's very simple. Birds of a feather flock together. I knew if I found one, I found them. They were all together. It was true. How did I find them? Very simple. I went to the phone book. In those days, we had phone books. I looked up the name Muhammad. I found Muhammad. I went out there, and lo and behold, it was a complex with about 200 Muslims living in an apartment down in El Cajon. Went all over California. That worked absolutely perfect. Code 20, Our solution, code 20. We all live in a code. We live in a code. You live in a code. I live in a code. In the military, we had tactical areas of responsibility, a geographic area. We live in a code. That code's a geographical area. It's a code called a zip code. In that code, we look and try to find 20 people who will go out and watch the mosque. Just drive by, don't stop, just look at it. Find out where the Muslim gas stations is, find out where the Muslim hotel is, the Muslim convenience store. You'll find them all over the America. They're all there. They're watching the military. Now we've discovered, for real, the whorehouse, that's what they call it, the whorehouse right outside of Kingman, Arizona, the big rig dollhouse right on Highway 40. The intel, my code 20 people came and told me the Muslim truck drivers come in there, they solicit the prostitutes there, that they want to do all these perverted, weird things. I said, well, those are ISIS guys. They're driving big rigs. They can go to all of the big, giant gas stations all over the United States. They can blow up the bridge over the Colorado River. They can drive a big rig with poison into the Colorado River, into one of the lakes. They can poison water. They can blow up bridges. They can blow up tunnels. They can do all kinds of stuff. Okay, that's how it works. It's real simple. You can go to my website, whatdidmo.do.com. We will end on this note here. Yes, indeed, we can monitor the First Amendment. Battle Hymn of the Republic, the official song of the GOP says, "In the beauty of the lilies, Christ was born across the sea, with a glory in his bosom that transfigures you and me. As he died to make men holy, let us die to make men free." Merry Christmas and good night.